Hi everybody, and welcome to Once Upon a Scarf. This channel celebrates the art of the vintage scarf, from luxury silks to bandanas. Each episode, we zoom in close to the wonderful stories they tell. Today, we're looking at an ancient symbol reinterpreted by a modern master, Yves Saint Laurent. This scarf, and its companion here, depict what are properly called bouteux, a motif better known to Westerners as the basis of paisley. Why did Saint Laurent pick it? How do these scarves fit his overall legacy? I promise the answers will surprise you. Stay tuned to learn more. I'm the author of 2 classic books on vintage fashion, Secondhand Chic and Its Vintage Darling. I'm a huge fan of the affordability, versatility, and in this case, awesome fashion history behind great vintage scarves. I'm so happy to share what I know with you. The bouteux. It's believed it was first used as a decorative form in Iran sometime in the first 1,000 years AD. Its vaguely botanical shape, possibly a leaf, a cypress tree bent in the wind, a pine cone, seed, or even a mango or gourd, evoked fertility, possibility, and abundance. The curling hook may also have indicated modesty. From ancient Persia, it migrated around the world, to Africa, Southeast Asia. Some think the yin-yang symbol of China, even into the bandanas of Old West cowboys. But it found its first and greatest flowering at the end of the 17th century as a hugely popular motif in Mughal India. Lush and incredibly expensive Kashmiri shawls bearing fields of bouteux came to the European West in the early 19th century. Josephine Bonaparte, the wife of Napoleon, is said to have flexed over 200 of them. The shawls were soon imitated throughout Europe, notably in the town of Paisley in Scotland. In this way, the bouteux solidified its role as a fashion logo unto its own, because even back in Victorian times, it stood for counterculture glam, adopted by Oscar Wilde, designer William Morris, and boho pre-Raphaelite painters to signal that they stood with non-traditional art forms. In the 1960s, the motif exploded again, thanks to Eastern-influenced psychedelic peacockery of musicians from the Beatles to Jagger to Elvis, all the way down to Paisley Park. What does any of this have to do with Yves Saint Laurent? Well, this great designer ransacked memes from around the world, not via travels, but from his huge collection of books and Paris's wonderful museums. He famously appropriated from China, Russia, Japan, and of course India. Paisley was one of his go-to emblems, showing again and again in his collections until his last one in 1999. Saint Laurent was captivated by India from the get-go. Well before the Paisley Revolution of the late 1960s, he was looking at the magnificent brocaded and boutade textiles of northern India. In his very first collection, 1962, we see a fascinating and quietly in-your-face pushback against the couturier status quo. Here, the rigorous, almost geometric simplicity instilled by his years at Dior had babies with the incredible embroidered coats and jackets of the Mughal court. Along with the coats, Saint Laurent sent his models down the runway in turbans embellished by the bouteux form. So how about our scarves? In theory, they might date anywhere from 1962 to his last collection in the late 90s. But several elements suggest that they're old YSL, which gets us into the challenging area of dating vintage scarves. There's so little hard data available because fashion scarves seem to sneak under the radar of fashion historians. But that's actually really good for us, which I'll get to in a moment. Anyway, there are several giveaways here as to their age. First, the signatures, which match. They are full signatures in script rather than a logo. More, just like my Christian Dior scarves of the early 1950s, the name floats free rather than being bordered or segregated within its own frame. The pale scarf here is of the same heavy cream silk with an eyelash fringe as those Dior scarves of the 1950s. Most important, both of these screen print designs were initially rendered by hand. You can see the splotches and drags of the brush. There's even a paint mark down here. Once again, this generally indicates creation in the early 60s or the decades before. Sometimes a collector just gets lucky. There just happens to exist online a photograph showing Italian actress Claudia Cardinale visiting the Saint Laurent boutique in Paris in 1962. And way up in the corner, you just happen to see, which means the black scarf is from 1962 and is very probably tied in with the very first Mugol leanings of Saint Laurent's very first haute couture collection. Now, well-preserved clothing from that line would sell at auction in the tens of thousands of dollars. This scarf cost $99. Its sister here, which I'm pretty sure originates around the same date, cost about the same price. That's high for a vintage scarf for sure, but in the big picture, the point is, buying a piece of fashion history is not way out of range. And with these two scarves, you're not only getting Yves Saint Laurent at the onset of his career, you're getting style quotient that goes all the way back to the first millennium AD. Win-win. Now, I did promise a storytelling element, so here goes. In 1962, we have a 26-year-old, nervous, genius Saint Laurent at the onset of what was to be a brilliant career. But he didn't know that at the time. What better motif to use on his house banners as ones representing fruitfulness, new life, and modesty?
And how closely did he identify with the booteh? Let's take a really good look at this scarf, because it's right here. Y, S, L.
And that's today's scarf story. I hope you enjoyed it. Please press the usual buttons if you'd like to see more.